Welcome to Sippin' Tales. I am Sherrilyn Dale, and I am so glad you found me. Over here, we gather around and I share a true crime case with you all. If that is something that interests you, then please become a Sippin' Dale by joining the family, liking and subscribing so that you can be a part of this amazing community. Last episode, I made the Sippin' Tales announcement, and some of you were sad that true crime and wine was no longer, but don't worry, there may or may not be something in a different format that is still geared towards the true crime and wine. And some were sad that Sippin' Dales were no longer a thing. And Sippin' Dales very much is. You watching, you are Sippin' Dales. It's just Sippin' Tales is the segment, you know? So Sippin' Tales, Sippin' Dales. It's just like a tribute to you guys. Also, I missed you guys last week. I was working on some stuff behind the scenes. There is an exciting project that is up and coming, but it's a lot of work right now. If you are a Patreon, you probably know what I'm talking about right now. So yeah, I've been working on that a lot. And I told you that I was going to be working on making more content. And so I will have 2 videos for you this week, and moving forward, that will be the usual. We'll be having 2 videos, sometimes maybe even 3. So very excited for that. So thank you for your patience, because that definitely did allow me to try to strategize and figure out like a better schedule and system for myself. So yeah, I think that's all of the updates for today. We can get right into it. Before we do though, I do have one quick message for you. Huge thank you to our sponsor today, Fume. If you have been here for a while, you know I have been working really hard on breaking some bad habits that I have, and I'm so excited to give this update for you. But first, if you are new to the channel and you've never heard of Fume before, Fume is an innovative award-nominated device that helps with what can be a really stressful transition of breaking bad habits, and it makes it a much more enjoyable and attainable process. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air, and instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. Now, last time we spoke, I said how back in the summer I had used the Fume to get through like a really, what could have been like stressful part of me being on a plane during traveling, but I wasn't 100% at the point in my journey where I wanted to be fully done. But then recently I have made some health goals, and a part of that was to be fully done, even socially, by October. So I'm very proud of myself to say that it has now been almost a week that I have broken my bad habit. Like I said before, I've just been redirecting and implementing change. It doesn't happen overnight, so don't be hard on yourself if the journey is not going like as quickly or easily for you. And if I'm making it seem like it's easy, it really hasn't been. For me personally, I needed to tell people in my life, hold myself accountable. Even telling you guys held me even more accountable, which I'm so thankful for. But I know for a fact, just from quitting things before, that this little nugget right here has made it so much easier. I love being able to hold it. I love the weight of it. I love the clicking, the fidgeting sound of it. It's crazy how you don't realize like different senses can just distract you and actually make such a big difference. It's not just necessarily like the movement. It's like a big compilation of things. And this bad boy right here, I'm really, really thankful for. And I know 100% from quitting things in the past, it would have been a lot more difficult. Fume has served over 100,000 customers. They have thousands of success stories. There's no reason why you cannot be one of them. I like to now kind of consider myself amongst that number. If you want to do the same, you can join Fume by heading over and picking up their journey pack today. Just go to tryfume.com/SherrilynDale or scan the QR code wherever it is here on the screen, and use Sherrilyn Dale to get 10% off when you get the journey pack today. Once again, that is tryfum.com/Sherrilyn Dale to save an additional 10% off your order today. All right, riddle time. Today's riddle is: 3 different doctors said that Paul is their brother, yet Paul claims he has no brothers. Who's lying? Without giving anything away, I am so mad at myself for not getting this one. Like, I should have gotten this one. I'll explain it at the end so I don't give anything away. All right. Today's case takes place in Tigg County, which is nestled in Cadiz, Kentucky. It's described as being lined with beautiful trees, historical homes, kind of like a really homey, cozy vibe that the residents are really proud of. I also believe that it's kind of one of those areas where like generations of families lived there, so everyone kind of knows each other. And just off of Dover Road, there was the Champion Farm where Lindsay, Joy, Ryan, and Emily Champion lived. The Champion family was one of those families who had lived there for generations. Lindsay Champion, when he was a young boy, his family moved to the farm in the late 1950s. And he and his sister grew up very close to their family, close to those like farming roots. And they even shared the land when they had inherited it later. And Lindsay actually lived across the street from his sister. Lindsay Champion is described as very funny with a really dry sense of humor. I love a dry sense of humor. He worked at the local farm credit service, and he's described as somebody who's very respected in the community, very good at his job. He also really liked to help other people. I saw an interview with one of his friends, and he spoke about Lindsay's passion of especially liking to reach out and help younger people. And this friend of Lindsay's had a son who was this young entrepreneur in his late teens who decided that he wanted to get in the cattle trading industry. And so Lindsay sees this young guy who's bought some cattle and he didn't really have any use for them, but saw that he had like this ambition. So he bought a cow and a calf from him, not because he needed it or anything, but just because he wanted to support, which I thought was really, really cute. Now, he and his wife, Joy, they met in high school and then they got married in 1972. Joy's sister said the best way to describe Joy is just by saying her name. She was a Joy. Now, Joy was a school teacher, and she was one of those teachers who just had that nurturing factor about her just ingrained in her. She was also the friend that didn't wait for you to say, you know, I'm going through a really hard time, I need you. She would just recognize that somebody was struggling, show up to their house, whether that be with some food or just company, and let them know that she was there for them and she supported them, no questions asked. It really wasn't a surprise to anybody that knew them that Joy and Lindsay desperately wanted to be parents. It was like that was just kind of ingrained in them to become parents. And they had tried for years to conceive, but after 2 really heartbreaking miscarriages, they thought that it would just be best for them and their path if they adopted. They adopted a baby boy named Ryan. Ryan was born in September 1978 and then moved with the Champion family in December of that year. So he was just a couple months old. And everybody in the family was thrilled for Joy and Lindsay. It was like it was meant to be. Ryan had this fiery red hair and looked exactly like Lindsay and his sister. And then when Ryan was 5 years old, a miracle happened to the Champion family. Emily was born on April 29th, 1983. Joy herself was the one to carry Emily. So she really considered this a miracle, thinking that it was really never going to happen for them. I love hearing those stories. My best friend is one of those types of stories after going through awful, awful miscarriages and extensive treatments, having a baby and then being able to conceive 2 other babies after that when there was just really no hope in their eyes. You know, it's those stories that keep people positive and hopeful. The two kids were definitely opposites. And I would say that's not even really because of the family dynamic with Ryan being adopted and such. That happens in a lot of families where they are, you know, blood biologically siblings. Growing up, Ryan was outgoing. He was a little bit of a class clown. He's described as fearless with this like everlasting ball of energy. And Emily was much more structured, a little bit more reserved, and for her graduation, she was actually voted the most likely to succeed. So just kind of had like a very focused way about her. She absolutely lived up to that title. She got a full scholarship and graduated from Auburn University. She was admitted into veterinary school as a junior and then got a job at Delta Downs Racetrack as a veterinarian for them. In his early 20s, Ryan was kind of looking for his path. I don't think that school's academic was where he wanted to go, which that's fine. A lot of people have been able to kind of explore different ways of making a career and not just having all of that pressure of being like, okay, you've got to go to post-secondary, get a really good education, although that is very important. It's not always the way of success. And I think that that's kind of what Ryan struggled with. So he joined the Army and was kind of trying to allow that to figure out where he wanted to go next. And he was in the Army for 8 years before he was discharged. And after that, he moved back to Kentucky and moved to the area of Oak Grove. After moving back, he kind of went the entrepreneurial, there we go, Sherrilyn, route, wanting to start his own business in construction, kind of doing handyman jobs here and there around town. And it's really interesting to hear about the family dynamic because while Ryan and Emily were kind of trying to find their, you know, path and their futures and what they wanted long term, this was the point in Lindsay and Joy's life where all of that was settling down. They were like in their golden year era. After long successful careers for the two of them, they were now retired and finally able to enjoy all of that hard work. At this point in their life, Lindsay and Joy are empty nesters. Ryan and Emily are no longer living at home with their parents, but on the last weekend of October 2014, they both came back home to visit their parents. Emily came from Louisiana, and on Saturday, October 25th, she participated in a local marathon called the Urban Bourbon Half Marathon. I think that name is really fun and funky. And also on that Saturday, Lindsay and Joy celebrated a birthday for one of their friends. And sadly, what was a really joyous, exciting evening was the last time that their friends saw them. Sunday morning, Lindsay and Joy woke up and went to church like they do every Sunday. Ryan and Emily hung back at the house. Emily was recuperating from her half marathon the day before. Before Joy left, she had the crock pot going. And this day was described as a really peaceful fall day. There was no clouds in the sky. Even their pastor had made a comment about the weather that day. Just after 11 a.m., though, that peacefulness and beauty of that day shattered. It was interrupted by the very distinct, loud sound of gunshots coming from the Champion farm. Like I mentioned earlier, Lisa, who is Lindsay's sister, lived across the street from Lindsay on her farm and heard the shots and was trying to kind of piece together what she was hearing. She thought, oh my gosh, that's loud. What's going on over there? And minutes later, she hears somebody screaming her name coming closer to her house. She gets to the door, answers it, and it's her nephew, Ryan Champion. And he seems to be in shock. He's not really able to get much out, but just like mumbling, forming very short sentences. And she sees that his wrists are duct taped. So she knows something's going on. She calls 911 and says, something's going on, but I'm not sure what it is. My nephew is in front of me. He's got duct tape on his wrists. I just heard gunshots and I can't really get anything out of him. And the dispatch says, do you need an ambulance? And she says, do we need an ambulance? And he says, yes. At this point, Lisa's very concerned, but she's unable to get anything more from Ryan. So she tells the dispatcher, I'm going to go over there. They're just right across the street and I'm going to figure out what's happening and I'll call you back. She drives over with Ryan, and as they're driving up the driveway, she says, where is everybody? Because she can't see anybody outside. And he says, they're in there. You do not want to go in there. She gets out of her truck. She goes to the front door and immediately she notices a bullet in the glass of the front door pane. She opens up the door and that is when she makes a very gruesome discovery and finds the bodies of her brother, sister-in-law, and niece. Now, Lindsay was actually just to the side of the house. Joy was in the basement and Emily was in the living room. Once she discovers them, she runs back out, calling 911, completely distraught, telling them, my whole family is dead. Just to kind of give you insight of how tight-knit and small this community was, one of the first responders on the scene was actually a student of Joy's when he was just in elementary school, and he was super affected and emotional by this because he said everybody just loved Mrs. Champion. As soon as other deputies arrived, everybody was pretty much on the same page that they knew that their capabilities of this like tighter, smaller sheriff's department was not able to carry out the manpower that was needed to carry out this investigation thoroughly. So they called on for assistance from the Kentucky State Police. And when they arrived, the scene is laid out as pretty eerie. It's eerie because it's so calm and just like a warm, cozy family vibe. There's the smell of the crock pot that Joy had been cooking. Everything is just neat and tidy inside. Just one of those homes you would just like to just go and chill and be relaxed in. Kind of reminded me of like my grandma's home. And then it's only when you walk through and see that, okay, yes, of course, this feels very vibey and cozy. And then you discover the bodies of this family. And like I mentioned, there was Lindsay, who was outside, Joy in the basement, Emily was in the living room. But next to the living room was the kitchen. And in the kitchen, they find another body, somebody who is not related to the Champions. So this case all of a sudden went from, okay, what is going on with Ryan? What is he trying to say to, okay, what has happened to the Champions, to now, who is this person? How is he connected? And why is he dead in their home with all of the others? The only thing they're really able to get out of Ryan, who seems to be this sole survivor of what has gone on in this house, and even though they don't really have anything coming from him, he's able to say in between breaking down and mumbling and shaking that he knows the guy in the kitchen, and this is somebody who recently had become very obsessed with his sister Emily. So investigators go through his pants pocket to find his wallet. Luckily, his wallet is on him. They pull out his ID and they learn that he is a man named Vito Riservato. This, like I said, is a very small town community. Everybody rallies together. Everybody finds out about this news really quickly. They're all gathering around Ryan, supporting him, and then also talking amongst each other to try to figure out who this Vito is, because nobody is seeming to recognize the name or his appearance. Now, the initial suspicion was maybe this was an exes of Emily's that nobody had heard of yet. She hadn't told anybody, from what investigators were able to find out, like from those close to her in those like initial moments of this investigation. But he did have like a very distinguishable birthmark on his forehead and into his eyebrow. So people felt like, okay, if Emily had been around him or introduced him to someone, like he had definitely this this characteristic, this feature of him that would have stood out. It's not until later on in the evening that detectives are able to communicate a bit more clearly with Ryan, who's a little bit more calm, and they find out that him and Emily were not in a relationship, but that he definitely was wanting to be in a relationship with Emily. Ryan said he took on a lot of that blame because he met Vito through like a work type situation. It was only the Thursday prior to this that they met, so only a couple days earlier. One of Ryan's friends had approached him saying that a mutual friend of theirs, Vito, was looking for jobs around town just to try to make ends meet. He was like in a really tough financial spot. He was a single father and things were really tight at this point. So if Ryan had anything that he needed, like an extra hand with, would he consider Vito? So he said he took a chance on him, but it only lasted for a day. That Thursday, he stopped by his parents' house and he brought Vito with him, and Emily was at the house. And Ryan said while he was gathering tools, Vito was creepily fixated and attached onto Emily. Ryan said Emily said he made her very uncomfortable, and that made Ryan uncomfortable. He didn't want her to be in any situation like that. So he just said like, this isn't going to work out between us. That was kind of the end of it. But he said that for some reason, this encounter, he just like couldn't shake it. And Emily was feeling really uncomfortable about it too. So that Sunday, while they were waiting for their parents to come back from church, Ryan had given Emily some kind of tutorial how to use, load, unlock, lock, all the things with a gun. If you've been here for a long time, you know I'm not versed at all in like gun anything. He said the whole point of it was that he wanted her to be comfortable with learning how to load the gun, turn the safety on and off, how to use it, how to point it, how to stand, because she was feeling unsafe. And he thought, okay, well, at least this is something that can help protect you a little bit more. So he says it wasn't a big deal. Teaches Emily, goes through the steps. She's like, hey, yeah, cool, I got it. And he just put the gun down on the counter in the kitchen where you kind of just like tossed your keys and phone and purse or whatever after you'd walk in from outside. He said after that, they were just kind of going about their business. They were both sitting in the living room watching TV. And he said out of nowhere, Vito walks into the living room from the kitchen area and he's holding the gun from the counter that Ryan had placed on the counter. Ryan says he points the gun at him. Vito points the gun at Ryan and says, don't do anything stupid or I will shoot your sister. At this point, Ryan says he is duct taped, and after he's duct taped, Emily is duct taped. As he's finishing duct taping Emily, you can see Lindsay and Joy arriving up the driveway. And Ryan said that this really got Vito uncomfortable, really restless, agitated, and he runs out the back door. Ryan said he used this opportunity to try to get himself free, try to get Emily free, and just seconds later, they hear multiple gunshots outside the house and then in another area of the house. Before he knows it, Ryan says that Vito runs past him in the kitchen, steps into the living room, points where Emily was, and shoots the gun. After shooting Emily, Ryan says that Vito goes to shoot him, but has run out of bullets. And at this point, he makes his move. As the gun is being reloaded, Ryan pushes into Vito, gets a hold of the gun, and just points and shoots at Vito. The day after the murders, Vito's roommates contact the detectives saying that they are hearing the news. They're in shock, but they're reflecting on a recent conversation that they had with Vito that might be able to explain what happened on the farm. Now, one of the roommates said that Vito had recently told her that all of his financial troubles were going to be gone very soon. He said he was approached by a guy named Ryan to do some work for him, and it was going to pay him $30,000. She thought he was just kind of talking out of his butt, because anytime she was like, well, like, what kind of job is going to pay you $30,000? Like, what are you going to do? He'd say, don't worry about it. Vito's other roommate allegedly spoke to Vito and had a similar conversation. And he also mentioned the name Ryan, but said that he was asked to murder his family. This roommate also didn't buy any of it. They explain, someone being violent as like the furthest thing from their mind when thinking of Vito. From what they knew, he was not a violent person. He didn't have a criminal past. And really his only focus in life seemed to be is just doing well for his child. He definitely was somebody who was not a stranger to struggles. He struggled quite a bit, it seems, especially financially. And really the only thing that was motivating him and keeping him out there looking for jobs on the grind was to be able to provide for his son. One of the more concerning parts of how all of this was being played out for Vito's roommates and what they were hearing was they recognized that, hey, desperate people might be enticed into doing desperate things, but this family was shot, and Vito hated guns. He had gone to target practice with a friend once, shot the gun a couple of times, put it down, and was like, yeah, that's just definitely not my thing. This detail really stood out to detectives because each shot on the Champion farm was a headshot, and a pretty accurate headshot. So they obviously have a lot of questions for Ryan. And 3 days after the murders, they bring him to the scene of the crime. They bring him to his family farm, and they want him to do like a walkthrough reenactment just so they can really understand, being there, how this all happened and how he came out unscathed. I mean, they brought the exact same duct tape that was at the scene, an airsoft gun, the whole shebang. They were like, we are redoing this. Ryan explains how he brought the gun in from his truck, that it was his dad's gun, but he was the one who usually used it and always had it in his truck for protection since he was kind of doing odd jobs here and there. He said after he showed Emily just this quick tutorial, he put it down on the counter. The two of them went to the living room to watch TV. And that's when Vito just kind of pops up in the living room. He said it didn't even register immediately that it was Vito. He just sees someone pop up and he was like, oh, what's up, guys? And as he's like, oh, Vito, like, what are you doing here? That's when Vito steps forward and he's holding the gun that Ryan had brought into the house. Ryan says he's duct tape first, Emily's duct tape after him, and that's when Mr. and Mrs. Champion arrive on the farm. Vito got restless. He runs out. Ryan takes the opportunity to try and help Emily, help himself, and he hears gunshots. So he gets up and kind of runs towards the back door through the kitchen, and that's when he said Vito runs past him. He said that as he's running past him, he says, excuse me, looks into the living room and shoots and kills Emily. This is when Vito turns the gun on Ryan, but realizes he has no more bullets. And as he's reloading, Ryan takes his opportunity, shoulder checks him, grabs the gun, points, shoots, kills Vito, saves himself. Once they were on the scene and able to kind of go through the whole reenactment and hear the story again, and that the statement was pretty much consistent, they found out that the statement could have been pretty consistent with the first time, but the evidence from the scene didn't really add up, specifically when it came to the bullets. Now, Emily was shot 2 times, but there were still 2 live rounds near her body. So there were 4 bullets in the living room. Joy was shot 1 time. Lindsay was shot 3 times, and then there was another live round around him. So in total, that was 9 bullets. But this magazine only held 7. So if they were killed in the order that Ryan is saying they were, Vito would have had to reload 2 shots earlier than Ryan said he did. They bring him back to the station after going through everything and then specifically call him out on that. They're like, you know, we're trying to understand here, but we're just having a really hard time explaining the fact that the rounds fired to when you're saying they were reloaded, that ratio it's not mathin'. And when he's confronted with that, Ryan's like, yeah, you're right. That is not mathin'. Vito absolutely would have had to reload earlier than I remember, and his explanation is that there is maybe something that happened with shock where he is missing a period of time in his memory. They try to give him an opportunity to try to add or change maybe what he thinks went on instead, and Ryan just says he can't remember anything. And things got pretty heated because investigators were like, well, this all seems really messed up that now, you know, you seemed so sure before, now you're not sure, and your whole family's dead and you have come out without a scratch on you. Ryan just completely shuts down at this point and he just says, almost verbatim, you're not being very nice and this is on like bullying territory. So at this point, he's released. But not long after, on November 12th, 2014, Ryan was arrested for the murder of his parents, Lindsay and Joy, his sister, Emily, and acquaintance, Vito Rizzarato. Now, fascinatingly enough, one of the main pieces of evidence that was used was not the bullet count, although that was pretty strong circumstantial evidence. Investigators knew, okay, well, there is a chance that maybe there was shock, that there would definitely be a defense argument for that he was just missing a lapse in time. So one of the main pieces of evidence that they used for the arrest warrant was actually the roll of duct tape that was left behind. And the duct tape kind of stood out to numerous people that were on the scene because Ryan, he was duct tape, but it was just like a thin, quick layer of duct tape. Where Emily was also duct tape, but she had layers and layers, like 8 layers around her wrist. The duct tape was all around her face, like from her nose all the way to her neck and her feet as well. And Ryan had always maintained that he was the one that was duct taped first, and then Emily was. But since the duct tape roll was at the scene, they were able to compare the rip of that last piece of duct tape on that roll to the end piece that was taken off of Ryan's wrists that day. So he was not the first one duct tape, Emily was. And that gave me the chills to think about because it made me think, how did that all play out? Like, did she know? Because she would be duct taped first, where you would assume your brother would be able to be the one protecting and overpowering whoever's doing this, which is why I think Ryan said that he was the one that was duct taped first. So it kind of gave him a pass that he wasn't able to do more since he was subdued. And did Emily know that? Like, did he just sit there and do nothing? Or did he play it off like he was trying to stop? Was he the one to do it? Like the whole thought just gave me the heebie-jeebies. This whole thing isn't done though. The day that Ryan is arrested, he calls into his local radio station, tells them that he can't really share a lot of the information about the evidence that they have against him, but after him now being arrested and a bit privy into what they have on him, he's saying that they're leading the public to believe that they have a lot more than they actually do, and there's not really much on him, and this is actually a day for celebration because the truth is going to get out there. And he also makes a special shout out to all of the supporters in the community that are still behind him. And he did have quite the support in the community. There were several people who just could not come to terms with accepting that Ryan had anything to do with this. One of those supporters actually even went to Facebook a few times to show support for Ryan. Her name's Anne Plotkin. I'll read some of her Facebook posts. On November 1st, 2014, she says, "Ryan, no matter what anyone says, you will always be number one in my heart. Don't listen to all the small-minded ones. They don't know you like I do, like all of your real true friends do. Please try to be strong and remember we are all here for you, no matter what. Love you too, Bubba." I don't know if she was trying to be like him saying love you, love you. That was weird. Anyways. All right, another one on November 13th, 2014. She says, I miss Ryan so much it hurts. I know that he didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to go and see him the day after tomorrow. Here's to Team Champion. I know that Ryan would be so touched by everything. I miss and love you, Ryan. And then the final post on Facebook, she says, why is it so much easier to believe in lies and rumors? I've known Ryan Champion 20 years. I know he is not guilty. He didn't do anything wrong. For all the people who are talking out their asses about things they know nothing about, you should all be ashamed of yourselves. Ryan has gone through and is going through a lot. People leave him alone. Now, I mean, you did have that type of support, but I would say that after his arrest, the support for Ryan dwindled pretty fast. And it was while the residents were kind of looking back and trying to piece together anything that maybe they had seen and not really thought much of just prior to the murders happening that could help with the investigation. And that actually ended up being a scenario that was very helpful to the investigation. There was a resident from Oak Grove who called the police after Ryan's arrest to give them a tip. He said that it was about 5 days prior to the murder. So on the Tuesday, he saw Ryan with Vito and another woman at the Waffle House. He's able to explain Vito's birthmark as saying like, you know, I recognized this. Also said that he knew the Champions, so he was able to recognize Ryan even before he was arrested because he knew Ryan, Emily, and his parents. So they went to the Waffle House to follow up on this lead, and sure enough, on the surveillance, you can see Ryan and Vito. It is on the Tuesday that this gentleman thought that he saw them on, so that was a red flag that they did know each other prior to only a couple days before the murders. And Ryan and Vito are also with someone else. They're with a woman, and that woman happened to be the one that was shouting out Ryan's innocent on Facebook and Plotkin. It just came to me that I'm like trying so hard just to be serious right now, but I can't help but, you know, go like, and now the plot is thickened. Okay. Investigators had actually heard Anne's name prior to Ryan being arrested. The first time he was interviewed, he said that it was Anne that was the one that recommended Vito do some work with him to try to help him out. And he said that Anne knew Vito through Anne's daughter because Vito dated Anne's daughter, and she would be able to corroborate that like he wasn't the best guy that his roommates and his friends were trying to portray him as, and that he was obsessed with Emily. So they bring Anne in to talk. Allegedly, they got the idea that there was something romantic going on between Anne and Ryan. And she explains Ryan like Vito's friends had explained Vito. You know, like he tries to help whoever he can, especially like if you're in a down on your luck situation. He's a hard worker, really focused, really driven. She's known him forever. He would never do anything like this. Fair enough, but when investigators ask if they were to go through her phone, if they would find, you know, anything between the three of them talking that would maybe say otherwise, she says no, but then she picks up her phone and she just starts like scrolling through and tapping. So the detective gets up and goes behind her kind of to watch what she's doing. And since he's believing that she is deleting potential evidence, he confiscates her phone and gets a search warrant on it. At this point, they're able to go through her texts and they see that there are a number of exchanges between Anne and Vito. He's seemingly doing surveillance on the Champions, and he's communicating what he's doing and finding to Anne, and then Anne is relaying those messages to Ryan. The whole thing, when you go through the texts and see the correspondence, it makes absolutely no sense. I understand I guess, like from a criminal standpoint, if you're like, okay, we can't have any communication, you know, Ryan and Vito between each other if this is going to play out. So we have the middle person who's going to relay the messages between us. But then you've got her on Facebook. She was also on the news being interviewed saying Ryan would never do this. And then Ryan saying, go and talk to her because she can corroborate everything for it. Like, you don't use your middle person and actively insert them into the investigation. You know, like, what was the point? I mean, thank gosh they did, because it's like, you know, when you're like, you idiot, but you got caught because of being an idiot. So good for you for being an idiot. Now, the belief is that Ryan did hire Vito to murder his entire family and that he offered $10,000 for each member. So that is where the $30,000 was totaled from. Now, whether Ryan's intention was to leave Vito alive and actually pay him, that's not known. Ultimately, he didn't have to pay him because he killed him. Because of that, Ryan was charged with capital murder and kidnapping. And Anne Plotkin was also charged with complicity to commit murder. She absolutely knew what was happening, could have stopped it. She's the middle woman communicating with both of them, and she did absolutely nothing. Ryan ended up pleading guilty to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Anne was sentenced to 22 years in prison, but she died in prison in 2019 because of a terminal illness. She was actually trying to get a compassion early release, and it was the day after that was rejected that she died in jail. I don't think Ryan would ever be honest about what really happened that day. A lot of people firmly believe that his family saw him kill them, that he was the killer. For detectives, the fact that they were headshots was a very telltale sign. Ryan was in the military for 8 years. He had skills with guns, and then by all accounts from those who knew Vito, he wasn't comfortable with guns, wouldn't have known how to carry on those shots. But I mean, I do think that it's worth the conversation of, you know, having not to expel any excuses for Vito. It's just a reminder to think of how desperate people can get for money when they're in tight situations. Not to say that there is any excuse whatsoever. It's just hard to really, like, it's like you don't want to believe it, but people do get super desperate. And I actually went through like some of his Facebook where it was public, and by all accounts, you can see that on his Facebook, that he was struggling to make ends meet, but that he was always having like his kid as the forefront of, you know, trying to make it work, trying to do things to provide for him, trying to find babysitters so that he could work longer hours. Every other post was about his faith or wanting to find love and, you know, just determined to have a better future. And so, yeah, it sucks to, you know, somebody to maybe see that desperation in someone, vulnerability, and make up a scenario and try to justify them doing something absolutely horrific to make money. Like, the whole thing is just sick. And it doesn't make sense. There are a couple theories that are out there on the motive. Ryan's former girlfriend says that for a long time, Ryan has not really made it secret that he hated his family. She said specifically he had a lot of resentment towards his sister Emily and her success. Allegedly, anytime his family was mentioned, it was like an instant mood change, and he would just be like enraged hearing about them. And she really saw it as just extreme jealousy for no really good reason. She thought, you know, it was like an ego thing. His ego was bruised because he couldn't compete in her success. But I mentioned that at the beginning of the video, there are so many different ways of being successful in life, and not all of it attributes to financial success. I mean, if you're really happy and you're doing what you love every single day, and you're just a good person, like, that can be successful. Just because you don't, you know, you're not a veterinarian and went and got like a huge accomplished resume of post-secondary education doesn't mean you're an absolute failure in life. And coming from those who actually knew the champions, there was nothing that friends or family ever saw to make Ryan feel this way. The champions, Lindsay and Joy Champion, loved both of their children equally, and even though Ryan was adopted, no one ever got that vibe. It was never, oh, you know, Ryan was the adopted one and Emily's here and we're so proud of Emily. And they were loved equally. One theory that was brought up by a close family member of the champions was that if Ryan was feeling this way and making that obvious to his friend's ex-girlfriend, his breaking point possibly could have been that he felt disrespected by a recent decision that his parents had made. Allegedly, they were planning on building an addition on to their house. And Ryan was doing his, you know, fixer-upper, handyman special, I'm a contractor, I'm a jack of all trades side hustle. But they didn't want to hire him for this because it was a really big job and he was newer to this, and that's fine, nothing wrong with that. And on either side, you know, you got to start somewhere, you got to learn somewhere. That doesn't mean you just take on massive jobs and just expect entitlement because of who you are and then gonna fudge it up for your parents. So it's literally as simple as they didn't think that he had the skills to do the job properly at this point. End of story. Doesn't mean they don't love you. It's like your ego got burned, you know, bruised. Sorry, bruised. Either way, burned, bruised. And then there's also the thought on top of that, okay, if he was feeling that triggered and vulnerable, now he's also being motivated by money because if his family is no longer there, he's the one who inherits this farm, can sell the farm if he wants to, their house, all their possessions, and just kind of scoot by without working for the life that he thought meant success. Yeah, the whole thing is it's just sickening. Really it is. Like, you murder your entire family because you think money is important and that's the be-all end-all of success, but you don't want to work for it. And to me, that just, like, I feel like that truly is just like the definition of a demented degenerate. Demented degenerate. Yeah, that's what he is. All right, that is it for me. I'm getting heated. I'm getting upset again. I will see you very shortly because I get to see you again this week, so that's exciting. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. Please don't forget to double check that you are subscribed. You've got the notifications on. I've been seeing so many creators mention that people are just like being unsubbed from them. I see it in the comment section every single video that people are like, oh my God, I lost you for a while because I was subbed and then I was unsubbed and I couldn't find you. So it's so rude. Not on your part, on YouTube's part. You know what I mean? Okay, see, I'm all upset. All right, yeah, so double check. Now what? Guys, I lost my train of thought because I'm all worked up. Oh, answer to today's riddle. Quick refresher. 3 different doctors said that Paul is their brother, yet Paul claims he has no brothers. Who is lying? Ugh, you guys, I got so upset with this one because the answer is no one is lying because the 3 doctors are Paul's sisters. Why did I just automatically assume that they were brothers? I don't know, because my brother is the only brother in the family. Like, we're all sisters. So it'd be like if we were all doctors being like, Paul's our brother. And Paul's like, I don't have a brother because he doesn't. Because my brother's name is Evan and he doesn't. Okay, that was the answer I should have got. I'm really mad at myself that I didn't. Maybe next time. I will see you in the next video. I miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.